we've detected some unusual activity on the dark web regarding your personal information. Sounds scary, right? That's what an email from my credit card company said. Well, what is the dark web? And how did my information get there? And what kind of unusual activity are they talking about? More importantly, what could happen as a result? Well, maybe a lot or maybe nothing. In this video, we're going to take a look at what the dark web is, if you should be concerned when you get a message like this, and what you can do to protect yourself. So let's start off with, what is the dark web and how did your information get there? Well, what the dark web is let's think about all the websites that are on the internet today and think about them as an iceberg. And if we look at the part of the web that is indexed, and by indexed, I mean you can go to your favorite search engine and do a search on it and probably find it. It turns out that of all the stuff that's indexed, that's about 5% of the internet. This is what we refer to as the surface web. That's the part that you're most familiar with. It's the part that most of us deal with all the time. But then if you do the math here, you can guess that 95% of the stuff is not indexed. And that is exactly right. Most of the internet is not indexed. You will not find it on your regular search engine. This other stuff that's not indexed, we call this the deep web. And the deep web contains a lot of information of all sorts. It could just be that it's financial records, that you need to log into your bank's website and then you get the web page so that you can see your account balance. That's a page that's not going to be indexed on the internet. At least we certainly hope not. So there's a lot of that kind of very specific business records and things like that that would make this up. Maybe it's paywalled articles that you have to pay in order to see. So maybe the article or the details are not generally available in the index, in your website, in your web search. So that's the surface web and the deep web. But I was talking about the dark web. The dark web is this tiny little section down here. It's really, guesses are only about 1% of the internet is dark web. This is stuff that's not only not indexed, so you can't find it on your regular browser. You're not going to just end up there by accident. You have to use, in most cases, something called a Tor browser. The onion router is what that stands for. So you have to know where you're going. You have to use special tools, and that's where the dark web is. And there's a lot of kind of people that hang out in the dark web. A lot of unsavory characters, a lot of bad stuff there, a lot of illicit stuff going on there, but it's not all that. In fact, some cases, the dark web can contain information that dissidents use in order to get information out if they're under a repressive regime. Journalists can use it in order to do whistleblowing and things like that. So not everything about the dark web is bad. It's not called dark because it's bad. It's called dark because you can't see it. Not with your regular browser index and that sort of thing. So that's in general what the dark web is. But now, how did your information get there? Well, according to IBM's Cost of a Data Breach report, the #1 cause of data breaches of your information is this thing right here, a phishing attack. Someone sends an email, you take the email, you think it's to your bank, you click on it, you try to log in, and instead you're logging into an attacker's website. They now have your user ID and password. And then from there, they're off to the races. And if they happen to compromise the account of a system administrator, well, then Katie bar the door, because now somebody could go in and use that account in order to offload all of the user accounts from all the users on that particular system. So that's how the big, massive data breaches often occur. Once a breach has occurred, well, then the information, the attackers sometimes put it on the dark web. They sell it on the dark web. They expose it there so that others who are also up to no good might use it to do more identity theft and things like that. So this is what we're doing here. And it turns out that there are monitoring services that will look on the dark web, and whenever they see that information goes out, then they can notify you. So that's probably how an alert like that comes in the first place, to say that your information is on the dark web. But what does that mean? Okay, so now we've described what the dark web is. Now let's look at the specific case. So I got this email from a financial institution that I do business with, and in that particular thing, it really didn't give me a lot to go on. So in terms of what is the risk, Well, I'm not really sure because it didn't say what information was on the dark web. It just said this kind of inflammatory thing. So should I even care? Well, yeah, I need to care. I need to go find out. But what would have been more helpful is if they had also told me what information was in there so I'd know about the risk. Well, so what do we need to consider in this case? Really, it comes down to what data was put at risk. That's the question I had. Unfortunately, the email from my financial institution didn't tell me that. So I'm going to have to go try to figure some of that out myself. But what data was actually exposed makes all the difference in the world. So for instance, if it was your email address, okay, not necessarily a huge deal. If it was your password, okay, now we're talking about a big deal. Your email address is public information. That's not something that necessarily you would try to hide. In fact, we tell that to people all the time. So if that was what got exposed, well, it's not really a big deal. But if your password was, it could be a big deal. These used in combination obviously could log into a particular site, but they could also be used in something called a credential stuffing attack. And in this kind of case, if credential stuffing is going on, basically they're going to try this email and password combination on a lot of other websites as well. And they may even try this password on other websites as well, associated with other emails. But they may just try that combination on a lot of different websites just to see if they can get in. So the damage might in fact spread beyond, because the fact of the matter is a lot of people use the same password for multiple websites, which of course you shouldn't do. We'll talk more about that later. What other kind of information might have been exposed? Well, if you're in the US, a social security number, it could be a driver's license number, it could be a passport. There are other national ID cards and things like that are non-US examples. Those also could be. Those tend to matter more. Something like your credit card number matters a lot, because if somebody has something more than just the number, if they have the expiration date and a few other details like that, then obviously they can make charges in your name. If they have your physical address, okay, again, could matter, but maybe not. This is the kind of information that could potentially be looked up in public records. Your phone number, also not necessarily private information. You might not want the whole world to know it, but the fact that someone else knows it is not necessarily a huge deal. So you look at these kinds of things and say, well, some of these are certainly more risk than others, but then also think about this from a corporate standpoint. If I'm an organization and let's say I have intellectual property, the keys to the kingdom, the secret sauce, whatever it is that I consider to be really valuable, then this information on the dark web could be a form of corporate espionage. And they could steal what are our secrets, the things that make us unique, and give us the power to compete against others. So if you look at all of these things, and some of these are more risk than others. So the real question you need to ask yourself is, of the information that was leaked, is this information already public? So it's not necessarily a risk if your email address is on, but this one would be a big risk. So look at each one of these things and think about it. Does it matter? If this information is already public, then the fact that it just showed up on the dark web doesn't matter, because it also probably showed up on the surface web as well. And sometimes these alerts that we get from well-meaning financial institutions don't distinguish between the two. Okay, so as you can see, it depends on the kind of information as to whether you need to care or not. In other words, is it a big risk or not? And if it's public, not a big deal. However, in all of these cases, we really want to know, what am I supposed to do about it? Well, one of the first things, obviously, is try to assess what that risk is. But what else should we do about this? First thing, just because you got an alert saying your information is on the dark web doesn't mean it is. Now, the reality is that you probably have information on the dark web already. Most people do, and it's been harmless. Or it could be harmful in the future, but there may not be anything you can do about it. But you need to ask yourself the question, is this a legitimate alert? Or is this alert trying to basically be a phishing attack? It's going to try to get me to click on a link, which is then going to go take me to some place that says we can protect you and remove your information from the dark web, when in fact they are the scammers. So just because you got an alert doesn't mean you should trust it. You need to verify before you go take actions on this. Then, what we need to do to prevent a lot of this stuff, consider that your personal information, to a great extent, needs to be kept private. So don't be giving out your information in cases where you don't need to. There's a lot of cases where a form will ask for information on you. Decide, do they really need that? Do I really want to give them that? Because even though the people you're giving the information to might not do anything bad with it, if their system gets hacked, then your information goes out. So it's just best if you don't increase your attack surface by giving out a lot of unnecessary personal information. Some of it is necessary and you have to do it. If you do believe that your account may have been compromised or that your password has been put out on the dark web, well, then clearly what you want to do is change your password. Change it to something else. Change all of your passwords for that matter, especially if you're using that password in lots of different places. Now, if you have unique passwords for every site, good for you, as long as they're not trivial. So you could use a password wallet in order to store these things in, some sort of password vault, something that stores those secrets and keeps them safe and keeps them all unique. And no, that is not an Excel spreadsheet. If you need to understand why that is, take a look at some other videos where I've gone into that subject. Another thing, every chance you get, you should opt for multi-factor authentication. Sometimes it's called two-step authentication, where you're using something more than just something you know, which is a password, but you're also using something you have, like maybe your device, your phone. They're sending a text message to you, and therefore you have to have that thing, or something you are, some biometric about yourself. So if we can use multiples of these factors, then if someone steals your password, it doesn't matter. They still don't have enough of the keys to get in. Now, what's even better than all of these things? What's better than having to change your password? What's better than if someone can't steal your password? Well, the best way to make sure they can't steal your password is don't have one in the first place. Use something called a passkey. A passkey is a different type of technology that uses cryptographic techniques that are stronger. And a lot of websites are starting to roll these out. You don't need to understand how they work. You don't need to understand cryptography. You also don't have to keep up with a whole bunch of passwords, because the system, if it's implemented properly, will keep track of that for you. And these are often used in combination. So you get multi-factor with a passkey. Now you're way better than just using a single password. What else could you do? Well, in the US, and again, they may have different, I'm sure there are different rules in different parts of the world, but you can do things with your credit information, because a lot of the information that could be taken from you and might be out on the dark web might be used in order to open a line of credit in your name. So it could be identity theft. One of the things that we can do here, you can ask for a credit freeze. This is something that is free. If somebody tries to charge you to freeze your credit, well, then you're not getting the right service. They are charging you for something that is in fact free. You can do the searches to find where the real ones are, the ones that are government basically sponsored. A credit freeze means it basically locks your credit. Now, there's another thing called a credit lock that does cost money, and there may be services related to that. But a freeze basically says if anybody tries to run your credit, they won't be able to get any information about it until you unfreeze. So if you want to open up a new loan, a new credit card, something like that, if you've got a freeze, then nobody's going to be able to run your credit history, and therefore they're not going to give you a credit card or a loan or something like that. It also means the bad guys trying to do that won't be able to do it either. Now, again, the lock is a higher level service, and you pay for that. My personal opinion, a freeze is good enough in many of these cases. What else can you do? You can monitor. There are credit monitoring services that you could use, but you can get for free an annual credit report once a year in the US, and again, different rules in different parts of the world, annual credit report that will tell you all the different lines of credits that you have open that the various credit unions, credit bureaus know about you. You can also monitor your credit score. A lot of financial institutions are starting to include this. My credit union, my bank, they also show me what my credit score is. And if I see major jumps in that, then I would be concerned about that. If the annual credit report shows that I have a credit card that I'm not aware of, well, then I need to go investigate that. Again, some of these monitoring services cost money, and some of them cost a lot. And you'll have to decide whether you think those are worth it or not. They may be subscription services, but the things I've referred to here, These are all free, and in my opinion, probably sufficient to do monitoring of your information. Here's another freebie I'll give you, is a thing called a website called Have I Been Pwned? And that's how it's pronounced. You can subscribe to this for free. You can put in your email address, and whenever they become aware of a data breach, they will send you an email letting you know that your email was included in it. Again, this is legit, but it might not necessarily be a cause for alarm. It's just a cause for awareness, so that you know if that's occurred, whether you should take some action, maybe go change your passwords, maybe take a second look and, oh yeah, that website now does multi-factor. They didn't used to do it a few years ago when I set up my account, but now maybe that I'm aware that this information is leaked, maybe I should go do something about it. So those are some things that you can do. Hearing that your data is on the dark web sounds scary. Sometimes it really is, but sometimes it isn't. It all depends on what data was compromised and what a bad guy could actually do with it. But you aren't without options, and now I hope you have a better idea when to worry and when not to. Better still, you know what you can do to minimize the damage.